Welcome back to Likras. We're working on the Parshas Shavua. The Parsha of the week is Chaye Sara. We're working on the very first pasuk. Very first verse, Chaye Sara, is V'yu Chaye Sara me'er shana v'esrim shana v'shav shanim. The first verse says Sarah lived for 127 years. Very famous Medrash Rabbah says, Rabbi Akiva ayayoshiv aderish. He was darshaning, he was explaining the Torah, V'hayu atzibur mesnamnim. And the congregation, the listeners were falling asleep a little bit. Bikesh Lauren, so Rabbi Akiva the speaker wanted to wake them up. Amar. So he said, Maros Esther Shamalka al Kuvkav Zayin Medinas. Why is it that it says in the Megillas Esther that Esther ruled over 127 countries? Ella, the reason why, Tavo Bas Bita Shel Sarah, should come the granddaughter of Sarah. Esther is more than 2 generations after Sarah. Shayasa Kuv Shechayasa Kuv Kav Zayin Shanim. Because Sarah lived for 127 years. V'timla Kuv Kav Zayin Medinas. Since Sarah lived for 127 years, it's right that her great-great-great-granddaughter Esther should rule over 127 countries. That's what Rabbi Akiva said. Ask the Rebbe Yismach Moshe, how can we understand such a thing? How can it be that there's a reward for Sarah for 127 years of her life? Her first few years could go in Bezer Gimel Shanim Rishonim Al Kolpanim. As Sarah, when she's born, she's a very, very little girl when she's first born, until she's 2 or 3. The Gemara in the Dvarim says about Avram Avinu, Ben Gimel Shanim Hikiris Baro, that he was 3 years old when he appreciated Hashem. Therefore, why is her whole life 127 years counted, and why is it that her 127 years should be reward towards her great-great-great-granddaughter Esther? The first few years of her life, she doesn't understand. What's the answer? The Kodesh Baruch Hu makes based on an estimate. Since in those years that she did understand, she did serve Hashem Sarah. Therefore, you get a certain accounting principle. You get on the other years also. If she were to have understood in the first few years of her life, she would have served Hashem. Chazal say, Agra de Kala Duchka. Gemara Bracha says, what's the reward for going to a shir, a class in Torah? Is the pushing, the crowding in the pre-COVID era. Why do you get the reward for just being squashed in shir? That's not the main part of the shir. This is with this accounting principle. Since you see people are willing to undergo some lack of comfort in order to hear a shir, if they were to understand the shir, they greatly appreciate it. Therefore, let's look at another medrash. The Medrash says V'yakel Moshe in a different place. The Torah says, Parshas V'yakel, Moshe gathered around the congregation. Asilcha kihus gedolos. And the Drush says there on that pasuk, this is how it should be. Have great crowds to listen to Torah. And there's a Gemara in Chagiga says, Akiva, considering the same Rabbi Akiva who was talking about Esther and Sarah, Akiva malchetz la'agoda klachetz la'goyim va'olos. Rabbi Akiva said something over there in the Gemara Chagiga, and the Gemara says to him, one of the fellow Tanoim says, why are you busy in Agoda? Leave it. Go back to Negoyim and Agolas and Olos. Negoyim and Olos is your main place in Torah. So we see from this that Rabbi Akiva would normally work in Halacha. And what is Agoda? Why is it different? Agoda is Eilu Moshches Libam Shel Bnei Adam. Agoda is a part of Torah that draws a person's heart. And we know, and the Gemara Yuma says, the Kohen Gadol, in order to keep him awake the night of Yom Kippur for his service on the day of Yom Kippur, so you keep him awake with words of Agoda. Therefore, Rabbi Akiva, who's busy trying to teach halacha, and the tzibur is falling asleep because they didn't understand him, so to wake them up, he points out to them, you don't have to understand everything. If you pay attention, you try hard, you're going to get reward based on this accounting principle, the way it works. And what's the raya? Because look at Sarah. Sarah got reward for her entire life, 127 years, even though she really didn't do anything in those first few years when she was too young to understand. And Esther received the reward 127 countries, a parallel to Sarah's whole life. So you see that there is reward based on this accounting principle that if you were to understand, you would serve Hashem. So you get for the whole time. So too, if you were to understand the shir, you'd get full credit. Therefore, try to pay attention. Try to listen to the shir, even if you don't understand, because it's going to help you.